Welcome to Being Human with Steve Cuss. On Being Human, we take a look at all of the dynamics that infect our well-being and our relationships. Not just our human relationships, but also the dynamics that infect our own relationship with ourself and our relationship with God. It turns out that the same issues and dynamics that get in the way of our human relationships also get in the way of our relationship with God, but also they get in the way of our relationship with ourself. In the Bible, it is very clearly taught by Jesus that our relationship with God and our neighbor and ourself, they're all linked. And if you are well in one, it increases your chances of being well in all of them. So we take a look at all of our relationships, not just like our friends and family, but also difficult people. How do you deal with difficult people without them taking up too much real estate in your brain? How do you know when you're not well? Oftentimes, the relationship with yourself is the most neglected, right? We just don't think about being in a relationship with ourselves very much, but also our relationship with God. Because when we are infected, when we're filled with reactivity, when we're living out of assumptions, when we are triggered, it is very difficult to notice the Lord. That's why every week on this show, we pause and we actually intentionally relax into God's presence. We do it by lighting a candle. Now, I know many of my audience join on audio, and for you, you are probably already doing something else as you're listening to this. You're exercising or cooking or, you're out taking your dog for a walk or driving, whatever you're doing. But you can still take just 30 seconds and intentionally relax into God's presence. Pay attention to your breathing, do a breath prayer. Those of you joining me on YouTube, this candle is just a visual representation that God is light. And in him is no darkness at all. And boy, I think we need that reminder more than ever. We do live in dark days. We live in very anxious days. We live where reactivity is escalating. And what this world needs most is connected, aware, present people. You and I, to not catch and spread all the reactivity going around, but be centered, be well, so that others can be well as well. Okay, I have a global audience, but for those of us joining in the Northern Hemisphere, we're in summer. And so I just wanted to offer some tips. This is really for my whole audience, but when you are heading into summer, you do tend to shift your mindset. Ideally, you're trying to shift your pace a little bit. So even though this fits for everybody, summer or winter, whatever season you find yourself, I am intentionally wanting to give some tips for us to enjoy God more in this next season of life. And actually, unusually for this podcast, I'm going to give you some homework. Of course, this is optional, but you'll get the most out of this pod if you plan to do a little bit of homework. And so I'm going to lead us through a 3-step process today on the show on how we can encounter God in a satisfying way 6 to 8, maybe 10 times a day. That's right. Intentionally pausing 6 or 8, maybe even 10 times a day and relaxing into God's presence, but also putting things on our calendar that intentionally make us run into God's love. I think when we traditionally think of engaging God, I think the problem is we tend to limit the categories of how to engage God. We think of reading our Bible and prayer, but what's traditionally called the spiritual practices. Those are great. I'm not speaking against those at all. I use those myself. But I'm talking about blowing the gate wide open to really trying to capture all of God's goodness and all of God's gifts, because in my experience, there are many gifts that we can notice many times a day. So a 3-step process to kind of build a list of God's gifts to us and then learn how to practice them in our life. Okay, first piece of homework. I want us to think about what it means to be made in God's image. We are taught in Genesis that human beings did not just evolve from nothing, from a single cell, and now but actually we are stamped with God's image or God's personality. We are made, in the Latin, Imago Dei, right? We are made under the gaze of a loving God, coram Deo, but also we're made reflecting God. And so one of the things I'm going to invite you to do some homework on is make a list Make a list of the benefits of being made in God's image. Another way to say it, and I have a lot of fun with this myself, what can you get to do as a human being that a cat cannot do or doesn't get to do? What can you get to do as a human being that a zebra doesn't get to do? Zebra, my southern hemisphere friends, I didn't forget you. All right. Northern hemisphere, you're thinking it's zebra. No, the queen compels us to say zebra. Okay, so as human beings, what can we practice that zebras and cats and other animals don't have? Because no other species in the world is made in God's image, only the human. So I'm going to give you 5 categories, and I'm going to invite you to see if you can come up with more. And actually, to be honest, I would like to create a master list of the benefits of being made in God's image that I can share with others, that we can all kind of share together. So I'll give you 5. If you come up with some that I haven't mentioned on this show, would you email them to me? I'll put my email actually in the show notes. You can just send it right to me, and I'll compile a master list. And if you're on my email list, I'll send it out to everybody. What are the benefits of being made in God's image? 5 examples, and these are broad categories. Here's my first one. Human beings notice beauty. We notice beauty. Now, maybe this is controversial for you. Maybe you're like, I wonder if other animals notice beauty, right? Like a lot of birds, the male is more beautiful than the female. Weird, but true. But can we agree in human beings, the female is typically more beautiful? So yes, for example, I notice my wife's beauty. That's true. But also I notice a sunset. Like when I'm out walking my dog, and I love my dog. You guys know I love Brody. But Brody never stops and looks at the sunset as the sun's setting and the mountains are changing colors where I live. Brody never stops and just marvels at it. He just keeps going about his day. But I do, because God has made me in God's image to notice and be moved by beauty. And so, for example, if the category is beauty, then a specific way I notice beauty is like a sunset or my wife, or, for example, music. I can put on Mozart's clarinet concerto, and honestly, I am moved to tears. I find music to be so profoundly moving. I struggle to put words to what music means to me. And many of you are the same way. You have your favorite music for your different moods. You know, my daughter, I've learned so much from Kaylee, but she has all of these playlists that she makes either based on the mood she's in or the mood she wants to be in. And I so enjoy listening to these playlists and noticing how they also shape my mood. But I've never seen my dog, for example, when I put on music, Brody never stops and he never seems to notice like a key change or when a song moves into a minor texture or something like that. So one broad category of the benefit of being made in God's image is we get to notice beauty. That's one. A second one is the way we eat. Human beings eat differently than any other animal. There are just 2 benefits to the way we eat, or 2 specifics in this category. Humans eat to fellowship as much as we eat to survive. Most of the time, humans are trying to eat a meal with other humans. Dinner parties, family dinners, get-togethers with friends. You're choosing a place. Maybe one of you is hosting and you're taking great pleasure in creating a banquet. It reminds me of one of my all-time favorite movies, Babette's Feast. It's not a very well-known movie. It's a short story written by Itzhak Dinesen, the Danish writer. She's most famous for Out of Africa. She wrote Babette's Feast, an incredible allegory of grace and God's abundance. I'm not going to spoil it, but Babette took so much time, like days and days, creating this once-in-a-lifetime feast for this one group of Christians. Now, I've never seen, for example, any other animal sit around. Like, for example, I've never seen 2 cats have a conversation over a bowl of kibble. That's because most animals are just eating to survive. But humans, we eat, for example, for fellowship and connection, emotional connection. And also, of course, we get to enjoy deliciousness when we eat. We don't just eat to survive. We actually get to savor food. I think when we give thanks for our food, that's one of the things we're doing, right? Is we are giving thanks that because we're humans, we don't just eat. My dog, he eats the same thing twice a day. His diet never changes. In fact, the vet tells us it's not good for Brody to eat variety. It's better for his digestive system just to eat the same kibble every day. Sometimes he finds something and that's never good. But we get variety. I get to enjoy food made from Thailand with certain spices, which is different. Like a Thai curry is different than an Indian curry. And there's something amazing about that. So, okay, the way we eat, other animals eat to survive. We eat for fellowship, human connection, but we also eat to enjoy and savor. Those are just two categories. One, we notice beauty. The second, the way we eat. A third category, it's kind of related to notice beauty, but humans get to be in a posture of wonder and awe. We get to feel a sense of awe. AWE. I know some of you like ORE. No. Awe, AWE. God is awesome. And I know that we are prone to use that word awesome a bit too much. Maybe we've diluted that word, but God is awesome. And sometimes you are out in God's creation, wherever you live, and you're just pausing and noticing the beauty and wonder of creation. Earlier I talked about a sunset, but where I grew up in Perth, Western Australia, the sunsets, they would take 45 minutes. They would take a long time. And every few minutes, the sky would change color or the depth or the dimension of the sunset. And it's just awe-inspiring. The beauty of growing up on the west coast of Australia is watching the sun slowly sink into the ocean. And there's just something about standing on the edge of the ocean. I'm sure you've done this too. There's something about being in a mountain range that makes you feel wonderfully small, appropriately small, not diminished, but free. Like there's someone bigger than me running things, right? Like I can give control to God because God is so huge and I am so small. So wonder. I've never seen an animal pause in wonder. And maybe they do. Maybe we just don't have insight into what they see. Okay, so noticing beauty, the way we eat, wonder, those are three. The fourth one, love. Okay, yes, this one's debatable. I do think Brody, my dog, loves me. I think that's true. But still, God is love. And human beings, we get to be in a posture of love, not just with our loved ones, but often for many of us, the hardest thing is to love ourselves as much as we love our neighbor. Jesus said, the greatest command is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor. And too many of us end it right there. And then Jesus added that pesky amendment to that command, didn't he? As you love yourself. And maybe your goal this summer is to treat yourself the way you treat others. Maybe that would change your life. I wrote a whole thing on that in my book, The Expectation Gap. What would it look like if you treated yourself the way you treated others? If you gave yourself as much grace as you extend to others? I am better at forgiving others than I am forgiving myself. And so for some of us, you hear love and you think, well, my dog loves me. Okay, I'm not here to debate that. I'm not here to debate whether dolphins love their children or not. But I am going to push us all on. The way we love God and the way we love others is linked to the way we love ourselves. Some of those people online that are just very cruel on social media, they get their kicks out of kicking others. They get their kicks out of gotcha and putting people in their place. I'm talking about the followers of Christ on social media that do this. Sometimes I wonder if the way they're treating us is just an insight into the way they treat themselves. If under the surface they're so harsh. I don't remember who told me this, but I remember somebody was saying to me, those fire and brimstone preachers that are always preaching God's condemnation. It's just revealing their image of God, right? Their condemnation that they're living under. But God is love, and you and I are made in God's image. And so we also get to not just give love, but receive love. which for some of us is hard to do because it's vulnerable. A fifth category I was thinking about as I make my list of the benefits of being made in God's image is we get to learn. We get to learn. I'm right now in a formal study program. I'm taking classes. I'm reading books. I'm writing papers. Here I am in my 50s back in school. By the way, first of all, my goodness, is it schooling me? To be frank, I am still watching too much Netflix at night. I got to get the discipline to turn that show off, go to a room, read my textbooks. As I do this pod, I'm currently trying to do a 20-page paper, and I've not written a 20-page paper in some time. But boy, am I enjoying it when I do. I've been traveling a lot lately, and I'm trying to redeem airplane and airport time to study. And I spent this last flight just reading, and it was so exhilarating to learn something I didn't know, to figure out how to integrate it into what I know. I get really energized by learning, and it just occurred to me, this is a gift from God, that humans get to learn from God. Like, this is also exciting in our spiritual life. There's always more for us in God. I love that. Not in a way that it's like a competition or we're not good enough, but there's always more freedom for us. There's always more to learn about God. There's always more depth of God's mystery for us to relax into. So learning. Okay, so here was the homework. The homework was, think about the fact that you are made in God's image and that there are benefits to that, and then see if you can list the benefits, right? So I gave 5 benefits. I gave some examples in those benefits. What's on your list? I would love to hear from you. Whenever you're listening to this podcast, just grab the show notes, shoot me an email, and tell me, okay, what's a category of benefits? I'll make a master list. If you want to join my email list, I'll send that out to you. You can just ask for it. Okay, now that you've made the benefits, step 2. How can you begin to practice micro habits every day that relate to those benefits? Okay, so for example, if noticing beauty is a category, then what's a micro habit? Well, a micro habit is anything that takes 1 minute to 10 minutes. 1 to 10 minutes. By the way, I'm just being arbitrary. I just made that up. But a micro habit doesn't take long. That's the point. Maybe it only takes you 10 seconds. Maybe it takes you 15 minutes. You get the idea. It's something that doesn't take long. A couple of minutes that you can relax into God's presence. You can pause your day and relax into God's presence. Or you don't pause your day. You intentionally recognize God is in the thing that you are doing. So I try, when I'm out walking with my dog, I happen to live near the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. It's very beautiful. I do not take it for granted. I try to pause just for a minute or two. Brody's not always happy with me when I do it. And just relax into the presence of God as I look at the mountains and notice the beauty of the mountains that reflect the beauty of my God. I feel that feeling inside me, that feeling of wonder and awe. And I give thanks to God. I just say a little prayer in that moment. Lord, thank you so much that I get to live in Colorado. What a privilege. I do not take this for granted, Lord, that I get to live in a beautiful place where I get to notice your beauty. Now, maybe you don't live in a traditionally beautiful place like Colorado, Perth, Western Australia. But Annie Dillard taught us in her wonderful book, Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, that any cubic foot of dirt is beautiful and awe-inspiring with all that God is doing, even in a foot of dirt. Pilgrim at Tinker Creek is Annie Dillard going down to this little creek and noticing all of the life, all of the activity, the little tiny bugs and everything that's going on there. You and I can all practice noticing beauty, noticing wonder. That's why I try my best to listen to at least one piece of music every day or play a piece of music every day. The last time I picked up my guitar was about an hour ago. Just played a bit of music. There's nothing like the sound of that steel string on that wood. My guitar has a cedar top, not a spruce top, so the sound is just thicker, has a thick edge to it. And it has all these overtones in my guitar. And, I'm a guitar snob and I'm a guitar fanatic. I'm not expecting you to enjoy the nuance of guitar, but I am inviting you to notice the particularity of wonder, the particularity of beauty, and just give thanks to God. So if the first step is making categories of the benefits of being made in God's image, then the second step is now making a list of specific things that you can do every day that take 1 to 10 minutes, micro habits. I encourage people to try to start with 6 to 8 micro habits per day. 6 or 8 a day. That's easy, guys. Anybody can do 6 or 8 a day. I try to do 12 to 15. I'm not here to flex on you. I've been practicing this for some time. But 6 to 8 a day is where you can start. And I bet you'll find yourself doing more. Okay, if your goal is 6 to 8 times a day, you either pause what you're doing, step off the treadmill of your life, or you are more mindful that God is with you as you are doing your thing. Then you just, in that moment, give thanks to God. Just have an intentional connection with God. Thank you, Lord, for this gift in my life. Thank you that you made me so that I can enjoy whatever it is. Okay, great. If you're going to try 6 or 8 things, you need a list of, I don't know, like 20 to 40 micro habits to choose from. If you go to the same 6 or 8 every day, it's going to lose its sheen a little bit. So that brings us to the third step, which is to create an intentional life-giving list. Now, a life-giving list does capture your micro habits. Yep. But it also captures the people in your life that God has given you. It also captures the places that take much longer than 1 to 10 minutes. Maybe you have to drive to them. Maybe you have to get on a plane to them, but they're places you love to go. When I coach people to make a life-giving list, I always encourage them to start in their house and then move to their yard and then their neighborhood and then worry about getting in a car or getting on a plane. So places might include, for example, the chair where you read your Bible. But it also might include, for example, Huntington Beach, California, or Assisi, Italy. I was just at a concert. My friend Andy Gullahorn has just released an amazing album called Winning Streak. I love this album. And he has this incredible song. It's a classic Andy Gullahorn song because it's both poignant and hilarious, called Bury Me With My Friends. That's the song. Link in the show notes, Bury Me With My Friends. But Andy, before he sang the song, it's kind of devoted to the life of St. Francis of Assisi. Andy talked to us about what it was like to be in Assisi. He's had the privilege of going to Assisi. Okay, great. So if Andy were making a life-giving list, even though he may have only gone to Assisi one time in his life, he's putting it on the list because it's a place where he gives thanks to God, right? So not just your micro habits, but a life-giving list is much more extensive. And so now you can list all your micro habits on the life-giving list, but you can also list the people, the places, and the activities that God has given in your life because of God's goodness. Now, I have over 160 items on my life-giving list, and I should go back and count them up, but probably 40 or 50 are micro habits. And the rest of them are people or places that take a while to get to, or activities. And micro habits, I try to be really particular with them. So this is the final step in the homework, and then I'll go back and teach a little more on the life-giving list, give some more examples. The final step is go on a 30-day hunt for the love of God. Be intentional in this next 30 days to look for God's goodness to you, God's gifts to you, and just have your life-giving list handy and write them down. Now, we have a link in the show notes where you can download a spreadsheet. We've already made a life-giving list template for you. It's just a simple spreadsheet, and you can download it. And if you want to make a life-giving list, you can either type it up or you can print it out and write it out, whatever you like. Life-giving list. And also, by the way, we have a video course on the life-giving list that you'll get at the same time. But over a month or so, you just capture, and you will be blown away that if you just once in a while, over the course of a month, look for God's goodness and write down very particular things, you'll be blown away how quickly you will get to 80 to 100 items on your life-giving list. And then all you have to do is try to remember each day to do 6 or 8 of them, Or get out your calendar and intentionally budget some time and or money to do some of the longer ones. And try to then cultivate a life-giving lifestyle where every day and every month and annually you're what's the word? You're tripping over God's love. You're stubbing your toe on the goodness of God. Look, life is very hard and there's a lot around us that's really difficult. And particularly for my audience that find yourselves in intense ministry situations. I have a broad audience on being human, but a lot of my audience are ministry leaders of some kind, whether you're a church leader or you're leading a nonprofit or working in a nonprofit. And some of my people that I work with have extremely intense ministry. You're in foster care, you're an adoptive parent, you do anti-trafficking work around the world, you are in a global location that is so intense you can't even tell us where you are. I have a number of my clients that have a secret location for their work. Maybe you're a local church pastor. Maybe you're a core leader in your church and a volunteer. Life is difficult. Ministry is difficult and it can grind us down. And my concern, particularly for those who serve in a formal capacity, your tendency to give too much away and not enjoy God enough. You end up proclaiming the God that you yourself are no longer enjoying. The life-giving list is the antidote to that. So where it starts is broad categories. What are the benefits of being made in God's image? Just use your imagination. What comes to mind? The next step, make a list of 20 or 30 or 40 micro habits, things that you can do 6 or 8 times through the day to relax into God's presence. A few of my examples, I rub my dog's ears every day. I've already done that today. I pray for a nation in conflict. I'll do that later today. Those are just a few micro habits. I hold my wife's hand. When I do, I just give thanks, micro habits. But then the deeper work, life-giving list, not just these little things, but these big things that God has given. I mentioned my friend Andy going to Assisi. I don't know if Andy will ever go to Assisi again. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But I bet he took some photos while he was there. And I bet his phone once in a while shows him a memory that pops up. My phone does this to me all the time. Almost every day, it shows me a photo from the past. And when I look at that photo, oftentimes the people on that photo are on my life-giving list. Some family or friends that I've spent some time with. And as the photo pops up, I use that to remember the Lord, remember God's goodness. When I got to go to this place 9 years ago, or when I got to be with these people last month, or whatever it is. So that's the other beauty of the life-giving list. It's not just things that you will do. It's things that God has given you that you can look back on and remember the Lord. And so then the next time you find yourself anxious, the next time somebody's taking up too much real estate in your brain, the next time you find yourself going into a meeting and you're already spun up before you get in there, or you come away from that meeting and you're spun up, pull out your life-giving list. Remember the Lord. God is with you. God is already in the room, in whatever meeting, whatever difficult thing you're called to do. But also you can just take a little moment to relax into God's presence, do something of a gift from God. All right, so that's the summer homework. We'll have links to everything in the show notes. I would love to hear from you as you flesh out your Imago Dei, your benefits of being made in God's image. And we'll see you next time on Being Human with Steve Cuss.